Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This week we had Vanessa preach, and it was a delight to my heart. I know that. And so, Vanessa spoke to us this week through the passage of Romans 12 and talking about a living sacrifice. And it was really cool. And so for Afterthoughts, for this purpose, would you recap for us a little bit what you shared on Sunday?
Sure, Kaylee. Yeah, we talked about how offering your whole self as a living sacrifice involves your personal and your public life, as well as your life lived in the church, within God's community, and alongside the world.
Cool. You asked this question that I really loved. You said, could God be inviting you into something deeper within your church community? I wanted to pose that question to you, actually. Have you felt that for yourself, or in what ways are you feeling that for yourself currently, where God's inviting you into something deeper?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't given it much thought until recently. And I would say yes. I would say that growing up in the church my whole life formed me, and my dad was a pastor, and I was at the same church with my family for 14 years.
Awesome.
And it was wonderful, and I saw a lot of good, but I also saw a lot of brokenness, and our family struggled with many things. And I remember leaving, after I graduated university and felt a little frustrated with the church and kind of wanted some distance from actively involving myself every Sunday because it was a small country church. I did a lot every Sunday.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I didn't take a break from church. I found other churches to go to. But during that time, I remember praying, like, God, show me what's beautiful about the church. And over my life, he has. And as a young mother, I think that I had to take a step back again because of the needs of your children. It can be all in. But now, as I feel things are beginning to lift again, I've also felt an invitation to stop holding back as much and to allow myself to love the church. I think sometimes I was afraid that if I loved it too much, it would hurt me again. And I'm sensing that it's time to start loving the church again, time to start feeling that I have an important role within the church. And I haven't always known what that is, but I've prayed about it. And there's been things that have come up over the last few years, like even being on the worship team or being in a small group.
Yeah.
And then lately I was asked to join the deacons board. And at first I was really hesitant because I know being in those types of boards, you hear a lot more than you do not being in them.
Yeah, sure.
But I felt another invitation to just trust and to let myself go through that. And I have only been to one meeting so far, but I can tell you it was lovely. And things did come up inside of me, and some fears and some tensions, but also a lot of excitement and hope. So
cool.
That's been my recent journey.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So that would be the question I would pose to you as a group, or if you're watching this solo. Could God be inviting you into something deeper within our church community? You also asked a question. She made my job really easy this week. She asked a lot of the questions. So I'm just going to now throw them back so that we get to hear a little bit more from Vanessa personally. But you asked this question, and I thought it was really interesting. You said, what has God made you? Can you explain a bit what you mean by that question?
Yeah. I used the word what because who sounded like it involved just your personality. And I wanted to talk about the soma, kind of like what I talked about on Sunday was, the whole what God made all of you to be. So your body, your mind, your spirit, your passions, So when I say, what has God made you? I mean, who's God made all of you? You know, where do you live? What's your family like? What do you like doing in your free time? What do you like working with? Who do you like working with? All those things.
Yeah. Just for fun, would you share share whatever you feel like sharing to answer that question too for us. Like, what has God made you? What has God made Vanessa?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
But he made me, the oldest of 6 kids. So I have, some very natural leadership, take control kind of tendencies. Yeah. I, from a very young age, felt interested in working in medicine, and that led me into pharmacy. And it's interesting because as I sit here today, I work a little bit as a pharmacist, and I still love it to this day. And I had this moment a few weeks ago where I was kind of thinking about why I even went into pharmacy. And I just felt just this kind of, Holy Spirit moment where he was like, I put that job description in front of you on purpose. And I remember reading it in grade 7, and it was just like so young.
Crazy.
And I remember reading about what a pharmacist does and how they can be involved in their community and how they can be easy to talk to, because sometimes you have to wait a long time to see a specialist or a doctor.
Yeah.
And so they're easy to get to. They're very accessible. They gave help and advice and told people how to seek care if they couldn't offer it. And I just loved that idea and that role in a community. And
grade 7.
Grade 7. So kids, like, never too young.
That's cool.
So that was a big part of my life, was figuring out just my occupation.
Yeah.
And then as I grew older and had a family, then that pharmacist part was kind of shifted away for a time when I was just at home. And then I had to realize that who I am, who God made me, my personality, my likes, my abilities, they didn't revolve around my occupation.
Yeah.
So that was another beautiful time and really, really hard time to be like, okay,
beautifully tense.
It's not all, achievement and academics, that there is just who I am apart from all of that is also can be offered to God.
Yeah.
My day, my schedule, what I read, how I talk to my kids. Yeah. My free time, my me time. Yeah. I think a lot as moms, we're told to get time for you.
Yeah.
And I like that because we do need it.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we feel like that is the answer to all our misery at home. And so I had to also lay that at his feet and be like, okay, like what does refreshing time actually look like? Yeah. And usually it involved him.
Fancy that, hey? That's cool. Yeah. Awesome. So I would post, so even like Vanessa shared, it's a big question, so feel free to share the part you feel most comfortable sharing, but within your groups, chew on the question for yourselves and with each other. What has God made you? Alrighty, final thought and question. You referenced a quote by N.T. Wright that I won't read all of it, but at the end of it, there's this little bit that says temple existence is what matters. And then you asked the question, what would it look like to give God all the rooms of your house? And I love that. I mean, I love that imagery. I love imagery generally, but I love the image of the rooms of our house and recognizing that there are rooms and there's areas and categories and spaces that come and go over time, or spaces that are there our whole lives long. And what does it look like to surrender those? For you, would you be comfortable sharing maybe one of your own felt experiences of giving God an inner room or multiple or whatever?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think sometimes our rooms feel very private. And sometimes we don't even want to label our rooms.
Totally.
Because then once it's labeled, it has to be recognized. But I think over the years, as God has shown me how trustworthy he is, I think I've realized that I can actually trust him with every room. And every room I let him into, he's not thrown back by or surprised by, that he just wants to inhabit that room to give us further freedom. I think one room that Oh, there's so many. There's so many. And I'm sure there's rooms I haven't even realized I have.
Or even identified. Totally, right?
Yeah. But I think I read a lot of books growing up about, being a Christian. Not a lot of books, but I read books about like, if you're a true Christian, you should sell your belongings and like go work in the poor. And I talk about the missionary story because that hit home for me, and it might not hit home for you. But I think, the idea of my possessions and my finances has been a big one for me because I just assume that in order to open the door to him, that he will just empty the room. He'll just take it all.
Okay.
And then
thank you for all the treasures.
And close the door and walk out. And that's not the reality. I mean, sometimes he does call people to big acts of charity like that, but it hasn't been that way for me. And I remember a few years ago going through a heavy period in my life, and I became so inner focused that I remember actually praying, like, I need someone else to help right now so that I can stop looking inward. And it, right away, God brought someone into my life that needed help. And Austin and I had to talk about our finances and what that looked like, but we decided to partner with this person and walk with them financially. And it never, at first it felt a little bit like, oh, okay, we're not used to shifting our finances this way.
Yeah, sure.
But then once we made that step and walked forward, it began to feel so lovely because not only were we sharing finances, we were also sharing with someone else's life, and we got to share in their joys and their struggles, and it became something more. And then when things kind of changed for our family where finances became a little bit tighter, I remember Austin talking to me and saying, things are tighter. Can we let this thing go? And I didn't feel at the time that I had been released of this. And I told him that. And I was like, let's just pray about it. So we prayed about it. And like not a week later, this person was like, I don't need support anymore. Like God had provided a new way.
Wow.
And it was just the most beautiful experience with giving and sharing and partnering. And it opened up my trust.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, when he calls us to do something, he's going to change our hearts. He's going to provide the means. Yeah. And it's going to be good. So that was a room.
And when the shift comes at the end of it, if there's an ending to it too, he's like the ultimate follow through.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I love that. So good. It's so fun to have you.
It's so good to be here.
So that would be my final question to you as well. If you're comfortable sharing it, what would it look like to give God all the rooms of your house? And maybe even after that, hearing that, because it really is, there's so many rooms. So maybe what would even it look like to give him one? Sometimes we have those pockets that come to mind. And so what would that look like for you? Well, thanks so much, Vanessa, for coming. Thanks for joining us for Afterthoughts this week. I'm Kaylee, and this is Vanessa, and this was Afterthoughts.
Bye.